Hi everyone! As my part of International Women's Day, I have chosen to talk to you about a very important woman in history called Emily Davison. Some of you may already know who she is, but I'm going to talk to you about why she is particularly inspiring. During the late 1890s and the early 1900s, the Women's Social and Political Union was set up, also known as the Suffragettes. The suffragettes believed in social equality between men and women, and they fought to get the vote for women. They did things like disrupt Parliament, chain themselves to railings, and they even went on hunger strike when they got arrested. In 1909, Emily Davison gave up her job as a teacher to devote herself full-time to the women's suffrage movement. She went to prison that same year and attempted the hunger strike. She, like all suffragettes, were treated brutally in prison, and those who went on hunger strike became subject to being force-fed. On the 4th of June 1913, Davison attended the Epsom Derby with the intent of advancing the cause of women's suffrage. After the race began, Davison ducked under the railings and strode onto the racetrack. She put her hands in front of her as a horse belonging to King George V made its way towards her. King George and Queen Mary were actually there watching this. Davison was taken from the track and brought to a hospital nearby. She never regained consciousness and she died 4 days later on the 8th of June 1913. Press reports criticised her for being a madwoman, but suffragette newspapers hailed Emily Davison as a martyr for the cause. Whether she intended to commit suicide at the Derby has been debated for years. Some think it was an accident because she actually bought a return ticket to go home after the race. Roughly 15 years after her death, Davison's dream finally came true. Britain gave women the right to vote in 1928. I chose to speak about the story of Emily Davison because although this story is a rather extreme example, it does show you that you have to fight for what you believe in and that nothing is impossible.
Today, for International Women's Day, I'm going to be talking to you about Malala Yousafzai. Malala was born in 1997 in Mingora, Pakistan. As a girl, her family knew that she had struggled to have a good quality education and the same opportunities that a boy would get. Because of this, her parents, especially her father who ran a girls' school in their village, wanted to give her as many opportunities as possible. In 2008, the Taliban took over their town and enforced many harsh rules. One of these rules was that girls were no longer allowed to go to school, so when she was 11, Malala was forced to leave school, not knowing when, if ever, she would return to education. Following this, she decided to speak up about the matter and started writing diaries for BBC Urdu about life under Taliban rule, which made her a big target. In October 2012, when Malala was only 14, a masked gunman entered a bus that she was on and asked, "Who is Malala?" He then proceeded to fire 3 shots at her, one of which hit her head. She was treated at a military hospital in Pakistan for nearly a week before she was stable enough to be flown to Birmingham for specialist treatment. After many surgeries and lots of rehabilitation, Malala and her father decided to start a charity called the Malala Fund. It aims to give every girl the opportunity to have a future that she chooses. Due to this, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, which she went on to win, making her the youngest ever Nobel laureate. To this day, she continues to fight for equality for girls in education by holding leaders accountable to their promises to girls, and frequently travelled to other countries before the pandemic to meet girls affected by things such as war, poverty, gender bias, child marriage and health issues. In 2020, she graduated from Lady Margaret Hall at Oxford University with a degree in politics, philosophy and economics. As there is currently 130 million girls that lack an access to education, there is still a lot of work to be done, but Malala has truly changed the way the world views access to education for girls. I have attached links to the Malala Fund as well as the diaries that she wrote before she was shot and some interviews that she has done, as I think they are really interesting and important to see.
Mary Wollstonecraft was a writer, philosopher and female activist for women's rights. She's had a critical influence on our lives today. Any woman who has the vote, can read and write, has Mary Wollstonecraft to thank. Mary was born in 1759 London into a family that was sliding down the social scale. She was the second child and eldest girl in a family of 7. Her childhood was marked by her parents' downward social spiral and the envy of her eldest brother, who was singled out by her mother's favour and by a wealthy grandfather's will. From an early age she lived in her brother's shadow and felt neglected by everyone simply because she was a woman. Her father was known to be violent towards her mother, her younger sisters and herself whenever his career as a farmer failed. She received very little schooling at a time when formal education was only available to the wealthy. Education was not viewed as a right back then, which is something that we take for granted today. In 1787, at age 19, she left home to work as a lady's companion to a Mrs. Dawson in Bath. Unhappy with the situation, Mary was sustained by a dream of living alone with her beloved friend Fanny Blood. Her work became interrupted by a series of family disasters. Her mother became ill and Mary returned home to London in 1780 to nurse her through her fatal illness. Then in 1784 she experienced the near death of her sister, who was a victim of abuse at the hands of her new husband. She responded by encouraging Eliza to leave her unhappy marriage and her newborn baby and flee London with her and Fanny. At the time, leaving your husband and child was evil, no matter the reason for leaving. Later that year, at age 25, she established a girls' boarding school within sight of the City of London. This allowed her to rent a house in the community where she mixed with the intellectual radicals of the day. She debated with Benjamin Franklin, Joseph Priestley, and John and Abigail Adams. Newington Green is where Mary Wollstonecraft began her writing career, starting with reviews, translations, and books for children. Then she wrote the internationally acclaimed work on what we now call human rights. She wrote her book A Vindication of the Rights of Women, which insists on the need for women to enjoy the same basic legal, civil and political status as men. Through her writings she called for the betterment of women's status through such political change as the radical reform of the national education systems. I hope I've given you a brief insight on how Mary Wollstonecraft managed to fight for gender equality and education for women. Of course, there's so much more to learn about her, and I definitely encourage you to have a quick read about her history.
Hi guys, so for International Women's Day, I'm going to talk to you about Nadiya Hussain. Nadiya first came to TV when she won the Great British Bake Off in 2015. Since then, she's been awarded an MBE for her services to broadcasting and cooking. She has many successful cooking shows such as Nadiya's British Food Adventure and The Chronicles of Nadiya, and if you're interested in watching, there are more on the BBC iPlayer. In addition to being a TV chef, Nadiya has also written cooking books and children's books. My Monster and Me is a touching story about a little boy whose worry monster follows him everywhere he goes. Having suffered with anxiety herself, Nadiya wrote this story to give children and parents the tools they need to talk about worries and anxiety, to ensure no child suffers in silence. She has also made a documentary trying to find the causes of her anxiety, whilst exploring the most effective and available treatments, which you can watch on the BBC iPlayer as well. I think that Nadiya is inspirational because of her bravery to write and film about her anxiety to raise awareness, as well as her huge talent for baking and cooking.
My inspirational woman is Nisha Ayub. Ayub is a trans woman who is a Malaysian transgender rights activist who has been recognised for her work helping other transgender people in Malaysia. She's a tireless advocate for the rights of transgender people in Malaysia, as there are many laws that go against them. Because of this, she has achieved many awards, such as the BBC's 100 Women of 2019. She was awarded the International Women of Courage Award and the Alison Deforges Award for Extraordinary Activism. These were all for her bold action opposing the Malaysian laws that were detrimental to the interest of people to live in peace without being harmed and oppressed. So, what makes her inspirational? At the age of 21, she was sentenced to 3 months in a male prison under a provision of the law which prohibits that a male person wearing a woman's attire or posing as woman in a public space. In this prison, she was treated badly by the warden and other prisoners. who made fun of her because her body didn't conform to what men and women are supposed to be. Since her release, she has been an advocate for the rights of transgender people in Malaysia. She co-founded SEED, which is the country's first ever trans-led organisation, and created T Home, which addresses the issue of homelessness for older trans women who are left without family support. What message does she give? As somebody who had been prosecuted for being who she is, Ayub tells young women, especially transgender women, that you can make a difference and to use your bad experiences to help others. In her BBC article, she states that trans people are just as human as everyone else. We cry tears, we bleed red, we have dreams and hopes, we want to be loved and cared for, we have feelings and emotions as we are your own reflection. We are not asking for special rights, but the same equal rights as others. So overall, through non-governmental organisations, she provides training to develop professional careers, addresses trans people's health and welfare issues, and provides them with legal support. She shows that you should continue to fight for the equality and protection of all people.
My inspirational woman is Katherine Johnson. She was a mathematician that worked at NASA from 1953 to 1986 and did crucial work to get the first man on the moon. Whilst at NASA, she dealt with segregation laws in place at the time while doing the complex calculations required for a moon landing. The book Hidden Figures outlines her story alongside other African American women working at NASA at the time. I watched the film adaptation of the book and it's really interesting and I highly recommend you watch it. She has been given multiple medals and awards to recognise her efforts, and she passed away in February last year at the age of 101.
Hi everyone, I have chosen Emma Watson as my inspirational woman, as I feel that she's been such a huge role model for my generation, as at such a young age she's accomplished so much in her career, by playing iconic roles such as Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter films and Belle in Beauty and the Beast, which shows how dedicated and hardworking she is and how she continues to achieve her goals in life. But not only for her career, she's also inspirational because she is a world-renowned women's rights activist and she is an ambassador for the United Nations campaign He for She, which focuses on gender equality and ensuring that women are paid the same as men and have the same rights as men do. Now, I've attached a speech that she gave at a United Nations conference, which I very much encourage people to watch, as when I watched this, I was so inspired that a woman that I knew I've grown up watching has had the courage to stand up in front of hundreds of people, and like I said before, at such a young age, and vocalise the change that she wants to see in the world. And I feel that she will inspire young people and young girls to use their voices and stand up for what's right, which is why I have chosen her as my inspirational woman, because she has definitely inspired me as a young woman to use my voice, and in the future I know that it's possible to achieve anything I want because of women like Emma Watson.